Welcome to Rauta's random rant video. Not so random after all, but here we are once again on a topic that seems to be, addressed to everybody. Pretty much, at least those of known as internet keyboard warriors, as well as social justice warriors, and those of curious minds. What the hell is that dude from Finland once again all about? Now recently, and mind you, this is merely a starting point, there was quite a bit of discussion on Rauta's Facebook page about the recent Goat Moon single review. Well, let's put it this way, it really divided people. There was a bunch of neutral people who were just like, hey, I'm here for the music and the goofy cover image. If you don't know what I'm talking about, maybe tune in for the actual review. But there were also quite a few people who were very, very politically loaded. One could really say the whole environment was divided into people coming from more liberal things, or like in American terms, coming from the left. And then there were lots of more conservative people, or in American terms, from the right. Now, mind you, different countries do have different maps when you start figuring out how the political climate is. In America, it seems to be just Republicans versus Democrats, right and left respectively. Now, for instance, for Finland, it's more about a little bit more complicated, and that applies to a lot of countries in the world. For example, in Finland, we call it like the four-field thing. I don't know what the official thing is and goes beyond the scope of this border, but just to give you a little bit of an idea what I'm talking about. So, draw a square, right? There's an up and down, and then there's left and right. If I'm gonna show you right here, probably, hey, it looks like on the left, figuring out the camera and all that stuff. Now, what is on the upper part of this whole square, which is then again divided into four boxes, because the center is the very, very core of things, and everything from the left of the center is obviously left. Duh, goes without saying. And everything on the right of that is, well, right, goes without saying. Now, on the top of the things, up here, is roughly the most conservative parties in Finland. And on the down part, on the bottom, there are these political parties which are super liberal. So, right, conservative, liberal, right. And on the left, you will see left parties. On the right, you will see right-wing parties, right. So, to get it a little bit more confusing is that when you put certain parties quite right, you are supposed to get neo-Nazis and all right. Well, technically speaking, that's not really the case in Finland, because if you really go back to the history and figure out where the National Socialists, also known as Nazis, or nowadays neo-Nazis are, well, I was told they're actually on the upper left corner. So, socialism, yes, very much on the left, but also very top, meaning they're super conservative. So it gets confusing how the very far right can be on the very left. Yeah, let's see that sink in for a bit. Now, what you also find in the very, very, top here are the more anti-immigration parties and also very Christian parties. So the more old school, the more conservative you are, the more likely you're going to be here. And the more liberal, doesn't matter which way you go, left or right, you're here. If you're not really left or right, you're going to be just in the middle, but on the bottom part. And also, if you want to be highly capitalistic, you are quite much on the right, but not exactly the most conservative, because after all, you want to make money, right? So it gets more complicated whether we're talking about, for example, Finnish perspective or American perspective when it comes to being liberal, conservative, right, and left. Now, this is merely a brief description of what is going on when people are being divided into left and right, because it wasn't always left and right so much versus conservative versus liberals. And people tend to have their own opinions when we're talking about, for example, bands related to National Socialism. Obviously, the right-wing people are defending National Socialist BM, and they were like, hey, Goat Moon this, Goat Moon that, yeah, fuck yeah. And the more liberal people, or in some case, left-wing people are like, how can you review neo-Nazi music? How can you even mention? You're promoting them effectively. And I'm gonna piss a lot of people off when I say this and or when I review this or that. I'm saying, I don't give a fuck about your politics. If you're left, I don't care. If you're right, I also don't care. If you're far right, far left, fuck off, piss off. I don't have much to share with you because I don't really like any kind of extreme politics. If you are far, what you call conservative, also big old fuck off you. All the biggest religions with major problems come from that territory. I'm not friends with that. Am I friends with the liberals then? More likely, because I don't really give a fuck. And liberals don't tend to give so much fuck when you don't give a fuck. Or maybe I'm just misinterpreting the things because I don't really care your political statement. When I'm listening to music, I want to hear the tunes. So, say there is a blast beat. Is it gonna be right-wing blast beat or maybe left-wing blast beat? Because either if you go blast beat NSBM, it's gonna sound 220 BPM, and you could really say it's just grindcore, in which case probably goes to the left. My point here is when you hear the cymbals, when you hear the drums, when you hear guitar patterns, take melodies or riffs or whatever, palm muted and whatnot, it doesn't sound really political, right? So all the political statements, the political ingredients when it comes to music, obviously comes from the people within the band, the artist's mind, depending what they say in interviews, what they say on gigs. Do they do this or that political statement? Don't eat meat or don't have immigration, whatever. It's just right there. All the stuff is within the lyrics, within the liner notes, or with the statements, be it on the stage or interview. Right. So if you make fully instrumental music and you don't include certain imagery, what's your politics really? Exactly. There is no politics inherently within the music. Music is basically vibrating. Now, the topic of today is actually how much is the reviewer or any kind of journalist responsible for promoting certain kind of music? How much is the reviewer or any kind of journalist supposed to tell you about the given band and the music, so you don't over there get butthurt or offended like, hey, he was telling me about this good music and now I can't listen to it because their political take is very, very different from mine. And also, how much is up to the audience to find out? How much should you care as a piece of audience right there on the other side of the screen when a band is not exactly what you're hoping for? I'll use the classic example, Burzum. Everybody knows how Burzum was pretty much cancelled from all the social media platforms a few years ago where things like Facebook decided, hey, this is not allowed anymore. You're not supposed to mention the name or whatever. You can mention the artist's real name, but not the artist, or you might get a ban temporarily or whatever. That applies to Instagram as well because Meta is one big company and it owns both Facebook and Instagram and also Threads and WhatsApp and things like that. So Burzum was very much a topic for a lot of years, but Burzum's music isn't exactly very political, right? So it all comes down to Barry Vikernes or whatever his friend's name is, Charles, whatever these days. Point here is, there's the time where you either separate the art from the artist or you don't. But who's responsible really in the end? Is it the musician's statement like, hey, my music isn't political, but I am supposed to tell you that? Or is it because of the journalist? Do the journalists need to write some kind of a disclaimer for you to figure out so you don't have to think for yourself? This is a toxic or sketchy or sus, like the nowadays kids say. Sus band, suspicious. And so you shouldn't probably be listening it. Then again, when we are talking about extreme metal, aren't they not sus to begin with? By the default setting. Aren't all the black metal, death metal, thrash metal and so forth, aren't they sus to begin with? Because, after all, they are extreme metal. They are supposed to be suspicious. Some might not be about politics. That might be just, genocide. Kill them all, Or feel nihilistic. Life has no inherent value and all. Very, very suspicious, if you ask me. If the bands are misanthropes, aren't that suspicious to begin with? Way more hurtful than just hating women, kids, or people of color, or, weird hair. My point here is, all the extreme metal bands singing with extreme topics and doing extreme lyrics, they're suspicious, even if without hostile statements or stage activity. Just look at the covers of those death metal bands. They are atrocious. All the Cannibal Corpse, full of blood and gore and all that stuff. Isn't murder, violence of all kind, suspicious? Isn't that sketchy, dangerous and so forth? Now, I'm not obviously defending here anybody or any band or any given ideology. In fact, I consider most of them being shit. Yes, you heard me right. I think all the things like racism, sexism, and bunch of, things like homophobia, I think it's utter bullshit. Other bullshit. Other bullshit. Or, Okay, that's a bad pun. My point here is, I don't agree with the statements. Can I still listen to music I don't really agree with on ideological sides? Sure, because for me it's music. Yes, I do have friends on the left. I do have friends on the right. Do I agree with their political takes? Not at all. Do I have religious friends? Unfortunately so, but yeah, I do. Now, I'm gonna show you a couple of things. So it's not just my face ranting here. Oops! Wrong band here. So let's take Incubus. I am anti-Christian. Can I listen to Incubus music because themes say evil, violence, death, and Christianity? Back in the 90s, probably I couldn't. I was so fiercely anti-Christian I couldn't listen to any kind of Christian bands. So nowadays, I don't really care that much. What about Gold Moon? Here it is. Hatred, warriors, forefathers, anti-Christianity, National Socialism. Can I listen to it because it says National Socialism I don't agree with? Yes, I can. Does it mean I agree with that stuff? No. Does it mean that when I listen to Incubus I will agree with Christianity? Of course it doesn't. My point here is, whose responsibility is it to find out whether or not you over there can listen to the music? Is it up to me as a reviewer to say, this and that band is that, and then you feel like, okay, now I can skip the band because I don't really agree with that. Because I got that, feedback from a lot of you people right there, like calling controversial was cowardice. And I think isn't National Socialism controversial after all? In my opinion, it is. And if you disagree, well, it's up to you. But my point here is, when I type it's controversial, I really mean it. Because like I said, people were divided. Some people was like, yeah, fuck yeah. And some people like, that's disgusting. How dare you? I mean, I get it. But that's what it makes controversial. Some people will nod. Some people say, nay. No way. And the same thing applies to bands of, Christianity. If there were Muslim black metal bands, the old school, Muslim anti-people, bands, the bands that would, just stone you to death. I mean, metal music isn't really in favored in old school Islamic countries. They would probably be also, the kind of a controversial stuff. But like I said, that's not really happening because metal is pretty much prohibited in countries like that. So my point here is, yes, they are controversial. But at which point I am supposed to know if a given artist is really something that the overall consensus is. Let's take Goat Moon as an example because it's been on the topic very much. So that is a one-man project really, apart from the live musicians, Black Goat, Grave Desecrator. Now, band is labeled as National Socialism. Probably true because there are, I was told, some spoken samples, some telling they're Hitler samples. I don't know. I haven't listened to most Goat Moon stuff. It never just, interested me. Do I know the lyrics? Fuck no, I've never read any of the Goat Moon lyrics. So how I'm supposed to know that? Then people say, but you should read because you're talking about it. I'm like, dudes, this is not my day job. I don't have the time. I don't have the luxury you're expecting me. Guy doing this as a hobby, listening to music and talking about you. So at which point it is your responsibility to find out the band versus mine. If you read an average magazine or a website, doesn't matter if it's big, you can go to Blabbermouth, Kerrang, Pitchfork, whatever. Do they always mention if the artist has a political statement or status or, ideology? Probably not. I have never ever seen most reviews mentioning when that's the case. They probably will just ignore it. There are some, maybe examples, some exceptions in which case it's mentioned. But like I said, I don't care. If it's, nobody starts, say, a Napalm Death review saying like, these guys are from the left, some of them are vegan, so yay or no. They don't start with that. They will start talking about Napalm Death's music and history and all, and say how the new album is versus the rest of us. Should we do similar things for, NSBM bands or treat them differently? And why would I treat them differently when we're talking about, democracy? goes beyond me. And the same thing if we're talking about Christianity or other ideologies or religious. Should we treat them differently because some of them might have different setting versus what you have right there? I don't think it's my responsibility. And when it comes to the audience, well, the audience decides for themselves. If you think you need to know whether a band has certain kind of offensive ideology, political take, or religion, I think it's up to you to find about it. I mean, if you already know, for instance, that, this band, Goat Moon or whatever, is problematic in your opinion, then don't listen to it. Just ignore it. Now, a funny fact for you people who are attacking either the band or me or whatever into that stuff. Every time you write a comment or react to a video, it doesn't matter what kind of emoji you choose, it's gonna boost the visibility. So when you go commenting like, yeah, you shouldn't review this or that, guess what? You're not helping the cause. You're actually helping boosting it. Because platforms like Facebook or Instagram or whatever, they don't care about your feelings. They don't care about if you're offended or loving the band. They see you reacting, they see you commenting, they're boosting. So the more you react, the more you actually help. And then you're bitching to me that I'm giving these bands platform. Bitch, please. So my point here is, I listen to music, I don't sign up with these ideologies. I'm way too nihilistic, and if you call me coward for doing that, I don't also give a fuck. I mean, if you have a problem with what I'm doing and you see me somewhere, hey, please come to talk to me. Maybe we'll have a cup of coffee or beer and we can talk it in a civilized manner. And if you don't like the channel because I'm doing what I'm doing, just don't follow the channel. It's very easy. Unsubscribe, unlike, do what you have to ban me. Cancel me if you feel that's the way to deal with the problems of the world. I mean, we do have real problems, but you can also start canceling bands, influencers, or whatever. But this is not about me. This is not even about the bands. I'm merely talking about responsibility. Is it the audience versus, I don't know, whoever the press guys are or influencers? Who gets to decide whose responsibility it is to find about the bands when we're talking about music? A merely musical output. Let that sink for a bit. I'm looking forward to your comments. Please try to keep them civil. If you can't do it, maybe just don't comment at all. Maybe get a beer, get laid, watch a movie, do some sports. Whatever makes you happy. Don't focus on the negative bullshit. It's just waste of your fucking time, and life is always too short for that. Now, stay tuned and stay metal.